And the best way to achieve excellence in execution I've found in my years of doing this is through people who lean into what their strengths are and continuously seek to refine the experience.
Welcome to The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods, the nation's first podcast devoted to the business and lifestyle of the hospitality industry. Now, here's your host, Woolco Foods CEO Stephen Toboroff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods. I am your host, Stephen Toboroff, and it's lovely to be back with everybody. I took a rather lengthy break because I really wanted to determine what type of content was best suited to continue with this podcast that would be both of value to the individuals who take the time to listen to this podcast, which was really the whole point of it, but also something that really sort of inspired and motivated me to record it, because I'd gotten caught up in a lot of other things that were very interesting and exciting and, thank God, profitable, and all of those other aspects of life with business. And I didn't want to just go through the motions and record podcasts. So thank you for indulging me in that lengthy break. And as I say, I'm delighted to be back. What I want to do today is I want to go through essentially two main concepts, which are ultimately very much tied together. The first is to give sort of an update on what I see in the hospitality space in the New York City, Jersey City, Hoboken region. I think much of that content will actually extrapolate out beyond those areas. But then also explore some ideas about what is really required to grow and sustain and flourish as a business leader in the hospitality space. Because there's so much content out there now on Instagram and YouTube and elsewhere on what needs to be done to succeed in business or what's required of leaders. And as with anything else, I think a lot of it is valid. There's some that I disagree with. But there are some key components to that dynamic that I very rarely see discussed, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you on them today. So first, where we're at this point in time, early 2024, in the hospitality space, is one of, I think, immense opportunity for those operators that are focused on really what is always going to be the key component in any hospitality business, which is authenticity and a memorable customer experience. I think right now, if you look at the trends, if you look at the concepts, if you look at the restaurants and bars and bakeries that are really succeeding and expanding, they are not the ones that are predicated upon flash. They're not the ones that are predicated upon ephemeral buzz. They're ones that are predicated upon phenomenal menu, phenomenal food, phenomenal experience eating there, not based on aspects that I think, as I say, are ephemeral, but that are sustainable. So I didn't want to name any restaurant specifically, although perhaps that'll undermine some of what I'm saying. But suffice it to say, what I can tell you from my vantage point is we have so many existing customers that are opening up second and third locations throughout the 5 boroughs. And these are concepts that are run and developed and inspired by chefs, owners, entrepreneurs that are laser beam focused on being authentic to their cuisine and making sure that their customers come away with a memorable experience. And what it means to be laser beam focused on what you do means to understand that to succeed in anything, and particularly in the restaurant business, you have to have a focus. You cannot be all things to all people. If you try to do that, you will fail. I don't know of any restaurant that does that lasts for more than a year at most. So whatever your concept is, whether you're Italian, whether you're a sports bar, whether you're some type of cuisine that's very novel and new to the scene, lean into that and make it as exceptional as you can, Really give yourself over to that which you know is your strength. There are so many people who live in New York City. There are so many people who are visiting New York City that they have all the selection they want. Selection is not a problem in New York City. What is crucial for a restaurant or anybody in the hospitality space to achieve is repeat customers and a memorable enough experience that those who have enjoyed your business share it with others, verbally, through social media, and any other way that they can. The way you're going to achieve that is through excellence in execution. And the best way to achieve excellence in execution, I've found in my years of doing this, is through people who lean into what their strengths are and continuously seek to refine the experience. Now, the cuisine is, of course, one thing, but the overall experience, what do I mean by that? The relationship that your customers have with the server, with the host who greets them, with the person on the phone that makes the reservation, with your website. Every aspect of your concept should create a memorable and positive experience, and the best and easiest way to do that is through authenticity. You don't need flash. You don't need to necessarily have the most dynamic and AI-generated technology to wow people in that regard. People care if they know that you're taking care of them. So there are so many concepts right now that are expanding and doing exceptionally well. This happens in market cycles. I remember way back in the days of 2020, I interviewed some guests who had a very negative view of things, and I disagreed with them. I said that what will happen out of this is a reignition, if you will, of the love affair that people have with restaurants and bars and being out in public and dealing with other people. We're now at that sweet spot in time where those concepts that are successful and those owner-operators who know how to handle the business of the restaurant space, to be profitable, to manage a budget, to run their business in a way that is sustainable from a financial standpoint, there are now opportunities to expand. Now, those opportunities are not as plentiful or perhaps as attractive as they may have been in, say, 2021, perhaps even in 2022, but they're still there. One of the great challenges that's going on right now, particularly in Manhattan, particularly in Midtown Manhattan, is the lack of full vacancy, if you will, of many office spaces. Not all of them, and of course it's building by building, region by region, but there are still pockets in Manhattan that will really lend themselves to being reinvented and to being reimagined, if you will. And so for those people who are willing to take the risk and expand, I'm seeing it across our customer space. And a lot of times there was an old sort of wives' tale within our industry, I'm talking now from the distributor's perspective, that you always had to be a little cautious when a customer would open a new location, because that would often be a harbinger for a challenge to come. Someone who was very successful doing one concept, they move to two, and all of a sudden it creates challenges. The opposite has occurred. And I don't know if that's the passage of time. I don't know if it's simply that those who are choosing to expand and replicate their concept in different neighborhoods and different parts of Manhattan and the region are just the premier executors. I don't know. But that has not been the case. In fact, what's happening is that it's become an incredible catalyst for success for those who do it. So I think it's a great time to do that if you're successful with what you have and you know that your concept, your restaurant, what you bring can be replicated with the same degree of excellence and authenticity in another location. I think it's a much better time to be doing that than it was, say, in the prior decade. So what I'm seeing, as I said, from when I began this observation is when you lead with great cuisine, authentic experience, memorable experience that is predicated upon showing people that you care, that's how you're going to find your niche in this market. And the restaurants are doing terrific, and they deserve to do terrific. And I think that there have been a lot of incredible lessons that have been learned that have resonated and continue to resonate. And I think those of us who have gone out to eat and have tried new places or have tried our old places again that we haven't been in a while, I think that the experience of dining out, whether it's in New York, whether it's in New Jersey, I've never enjoyed it as much as I have now, and I'm trying to put my finger on all of the various reasons, but I can't other than what I've said. That's really what I've seen from my vantage point. Now, what I want to shift to, which goes exactly to this concept of authenticity and something I didn't bring up, but is tied into this creativity, is a lot of the information that's been out there that is being disseminated to and amongst business leaders on how to be successful in business and grow their business. One of the key components that I very rarely hear discussed or written about is what I'm going to call, for purposes of this conversation, the creative mind. And what I mean by the creative mind is the following. It's a derivative of information that you would find within the Stoic philosophy. It's a derivative of information that you would find really in any type of philosophy that recognizes that the reality that we experience, quote unquote reality, is an experience that is very much a byproduct of, well, let me back it up and go like this way to make it as clear as possible. Nothing that we experience in life has any meaning or significance until it's filtered through our mind. Whether we look at a chair, we look at a sunset, we enter a room, we meet a person, that experience is very much impacted by what I'll call the filter that we have over our mind. If you put a blue filter over a camera lens, everything's going to look blue. If you put a green filter, it's going to look green. Those filters are immutable. But each of us have our own filters, and I'm not going to go into this from a personal level. This is going to be directly tied into how it can impact business and how being cognizant of this can make people better business leaders, better entrepreneurs, and strengthen what they're doing with their companies, their hospitality businesses, whatever you're doing. So the filter we have in our minds at all times is one that we can be very creative with, meaning we can be aware when we walk into a room and look at something and say, oh, that's an ugly chair, it reminds me of this. That's not reality. That's you making a decision, consciously or unconsciously, to process what's in front of you in a certain way. I think this is pretty basic and people can understand it. So the first thing, of course, we have to understand is that that filter that's on our mind, which is our perception of things, our beliefs about things, our biases, our good or bad about things, completely shapes how everything we interact with is created in our mind as reality, and it's completely changeable. Therefore, when you understand this, life is a completely iterative and creative process. It's not easy to do, but that's what we can do. How does this translate into business? How does this translate into being a business leader? The first thing we have to understand is in our businesses, if we have more than one person working with us, we're dependent upon other people executing at a high level to succeed. We can call them our team. When we're interacting with our team, the first thing we need to do is be great listeners. What does it mean to be a great listener? It means to be able to allow a person to articulate what they want to say and be actively listening and processing what they're saying without reaching any conclusions. If we're not capable of absorbing and understanding and processing what people tell us in the most unfiltered and pure way possible, we're going to miss out on enormous amounts of opportunities. So if you're talking to your manager, if you're talking to your chef, if you're talking to your mixologist, if you're talking to servers, these individuals have vital information to share with you every day, multiple times throughout the day. But so many of us can get busy and we don't have time to listen or actively listen. Or sometimes we bring situations that are in front of us with our own biases. We don't actively listen. And what happens? Somebody comes to us and before they even let their mouth, you're saying, oh, shit, John's going to come and complain about this again. Or, oh, Mary's telling me about the customers, but we know that the customers don't know what they're doing because we're trying a new cuisine. Some of these thoughts are conscious, some of these thoughts are unconscious. But that thinking that you're not taking control of is framing everything that you're doing with the person you're speaking and has the potential to dramatically impact your business for the negative or for the positive if you correct it. This is something I've given a lot of thought to, just this whole iterative aspect of life, because I've spent the last several months reading a lot of fiction again. I was a literature major in college and then went on to law school and had periods in my life where I did a great deal of reading that was nonfiction. But over the past year, I've been reading a lot of fiction and great fiction. And something with that has really, I guess, opened my mind to the creative dynamic of existence and reality. Because, of course, when you're reading, no two people read the same book, as the cliche goes. And I started thinking to myself, how does this apply with business? Meaning, if I plugged someone else into your business or into my business, and if that person had a different way of listening, and we're going to get into other things, how would the business differ? Because so much of what happens in a business is with the leader. So that's the first thing that I just wanted to share, that we have to be mindful of the fact that nothing that we call reality really exists for us until it comes into our mind. And our mind is really layered with all kinds of different filters, thoughts, biases, impressions, past, whatever. And the first thing is, if we can be mindful of that, if we can be aware of it so that it doesn't get in the way of us processing things, if we can actively listen, that's the first thing that I think is going to make us better leaders, going to make our business better. The second thing is, what do we do as business leaders to be creative and compelling for our customers? Now, this would apply to any business, but it particularly applies to the hospitality space, because I would argue that the hospitality space is as much an act of artistry as being a painter or a musician or a novelist or a poet. It's a dynamic canvas. When someone enters your restaurant, they're experiencing something. They're not just nourishing themselves. If they wanted to do that, they could do that at home. They're coming for an experience. So once we consciously recognize that the business that we're in hospitality is substantially, one could say primarily, an artistic business, we have to ask ourselves, how creative are we? And perhaps more importantly, how much creativity are we actively encouraging in our team? And not just with the chef, with the servers, with the bartenders, with the hosts. I'm thinking of a movie that's sort of the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. It's kind of funny. I believe the movie was called Office Space, and Jennifer Aniston is working as a waitress in this restaurant. I forget the name of it. And one of the requirements of the restaurant is that you have a certain number of decorative buttons on your uniform to show flair. And she only has 6, and the restaurant wants you to have 8. And it's a whole funny thing, but it underscores the inauthenticity in a lot of establishments that are trying to say, hey, look, we're fun. Isn't this a great time? And let's laugh and have a great time. But it's really just compelled, mindless drone behavior that's superimposed on people who work there. And of course, that gets communicated to the staff. We're talking about something completely different. We're talking about something that I think was best described by John Cassavetes, the famous director, when he was interviewed. And they asked him, what does he view as his primary objective as a director? And he said the objective is to get everyone involved in the film to be as creative as possible in their own eyes, not trying to simply replicate or produce what he would view as creative or viable or attractive, but what they think. And I've always thought that's a beautiful quote. I've tried to use it in my business, but I think it's especially true in restaurants, and I think it's especially true today. The more they push, they being whomever you want to say, AI and technology is great, and AI is going to have a lot of great tools, but the more we're going to see an equal and sustainable desire for meaningful human interactions. So I think in the same way we were talking about listening as an active listener, I think it's well worth business owners spending some time, taking some time away from their business, even if it's just a walk in the park or whatever you want to do, and ask yourself the following question: what can I do to unleash the creativity of the people that are working in my restaurant? And what would that do for my restaurant? Now, some of you are very much going to say, well, look, I've created this brand. I'm in control of my brand. I don't want anybody doing anything that's off-brand, so I really don't want to take the risk of what you're saying. And I understand that, and it's a valid point. What I would say in response to that concern is, nothing that a person in your business does that is an authentic attempt to make the customer's experience better should ever be off-brand. Because everything that you do in a hospitality business and many other businesses is for the customer to have a great experience. So if you have everyone in your business, as much as possible, thinking in that light, I think it would be extremely constructive. But this is just one man's opinion. So how do you do that? There's lots of different ways to do it. But I think the best way to do it, at least that I've thought of, is to speak with people in your business. Let them know that, hey, people who come to our restaurant are coming for a lot of different things. And we know what great service looks like. It's getting the customers the food they want at the right time and being friendly and gracious. But what else can we do to make that a memorable experience? And more importantly, what do you think? What would make your job more interesting, more fun? A lot of people that work in the hospitality business are creative people by nature. They love to try new things. They love to be artistic. They love to be creative, if only they'll be asked. So it's almost as if superimposing that creative mind that I was talking about earlier on your business, making it an ever-dynamic, evolving, creative business. That starts with looking at things in a different way. It doesn't mean in any way becoming untethered from the disciplines or the must-dos that have to be done to run a successful restaurant. If you don't rotate inventory properly, if you don't manage your budget properly, if you don't keep up with necessary innovations properly, if you don't do all the things you need to do, then having the creative mind won't help you. But if you're exercising as much as you can on those objectives, if you're executing rather, then having that creative approach, that dynamic approach, I believe will be incredibly helpful. And then the final thing that I want to just say is so much of what I see in a lot of videos, Instagram Reels and whatnot, is almost like top-down dictatorial stuff, like let's get as infused with energy as we can, and then let's communicate that energy to the people who work from us, and then they'll be as energetic as we are, and then we're just going to overwhelm the situation. I don't think that's the appropriate response for sustainable success. I absolutely believe that people should be as energetic and as vital as possible. So for sure, business owners should be making time to exercise 5-6 days a week, eat properly, avoid substances on a consistent basis that depress you, take away your energy, all of that, for sure. The mind is going to be a reflection of all those dynamics, absolutely. Second thing is of course, incorporating into our thinking, incorporating into our perspective of the world, positive, nourishing, interesting, invigorating information. So instead of wasting time with nonsense, we're actually exposing our mind to things that truly stimulate us. Okay, so this is very true. But as the business leader, I think the best way to get the most out of your team, the most out of your company, is by letting everybody know, hey, I've got a vision. We're making this artistic project together. I've got clear objectives. I've got clear must-dos. But I want to hear what you think. I'm really here to listen. I want this to be every day something that when we're done, we're proud of what we created. We're proud that we were innovative. We're proud that we were artistic. We're proud that we were authentic. These are things that a lot of people are afraid to do, but it's ultimately what everyone is craving from an experience. And I'm seeing it a lot more in restaurants, and I'm absolutely seeing it in those restaurants that are opening second and third and fourth locations and doing it successfully. Some of them have been guests on my podcast. I don't want to call anybody out, but people I have enormous respect for. So I just wanted to share this with you. This was a subject that's interested me because as I'm sitting around and I'm reading and I'm thinking, because I enjoy thinking, I enjoy learning, I enjoy being exposed to stimuli that is not just business-oriented. And I love business. I always enjoyed accounting. I enjoyed the law. I enjoy books on business. I enjoy listening to lectures that people give on business. It's fascinating to me. But I also enjoy reading great novels and philosophy and looking at great works of art and then taking a step back and saying, what from this experience can I incorporate into my life? And it may not even be a direct lesson, but an approach, a novel way of looking at something, a novel way of thinking, a novel way of looking at myself. So I did want to share that with everybody. Again, it's the beginning of the year. There's a lot of information that's thrown at us. A lot of times we're setting resolutions and goals. I'm a big believer in goal setting. I have an earlier podcast if you want to listen to goal setting. But probably the most enjoyable thing that we can do, and something that I'm working on, is if we really recognize that this thing that we call reality, that we're living, very much has within it a component that requires us to be creative. And if we simply abdicate that and go through life and allow our conscious and subconscious filters to dictate everything we see, it's a very limited experience. But if we recognize that those filters are not immutable, and that in fact they're dynamic, and they can change, and they can be iterative, and when we activate that, we get to really create and almost have a mutual relationship with existence and reality. And the same goes with our business. If we don't go in there every day with the same routine and looking at things the same way, but instead we go in there with an open mind, a creative mind, and desire to engage in a meaningful way and actively listen to the people that we're working with, I think you're going to be very excited by what comes out of that. So in any event, it's wonderful to be back. Would love to hear thoughts from all of you in terms of what you think, if you agree with what I'm saying, if you disagree, if you have additional thoughts, if you have anything to add to the conversation, I always welcome that. So please email me at Steven, Steven, at woolcofoods.com. Please follow us on Woolco Foods at Instagram. You can check out our website, woolcofoods.com. We have all of our other podcasts there. And I just want to wish everyone an awesome, awesome day, and just great to be back with everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods. Please be sure to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. And to learn more about Woolco Foods or Steven Toboroff, please visit us at woolcofoods.net.